Hello and welcome to Autistic Pride Aberdeen. My name is Marion McLaughlin. I'm the founder and organiser of the Autistic Pride events that take place here in Aberdeen City. Our events have always been done in collaboration with the Scottish Women's Autism Network and the Triple the charity that I work for, and this year is no exception. This is our third year taking part in Autistic Pride, and while we are absolutely gutted that we can't go out and blow bubbles in the park or put on an art exhibit the same way that we have done previously, we are really excited to be taking part in this online event. So thank you so much to the Autistic Pride Alliance for organising and supporting all of this. We're thoroughly delighted to be here. And we've got a really exciting hour coming up. We have the wonderful Aileen Patterson from Swan is talking about her creative process and sharing some of her work. We are delighted to have Chris Bonello from Autistic Not Weird. Chris's second book has just been released, so he'll be talking with us about his creative process and his work as an author. So sit back, relax, get yourself a cup of tea, and we hope that you thoroughly enjoyed the next hour in our company. We have got two very special guests with us today. We have Chris Bonello and Aileen Patterson. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself? Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Chris Bonello. I'm a special needs tutor. Used to be a primary school teacher. I'm autistic myself. I'm also a writer, a speaker, autism advocate, and a novelist.
And you maybe run a website, a small one.
Yeah, this thing called Autistic Not Weird, which started 5 years ago and seems to have caught on a bit.
I think some people might have heard of it. Yeah, and you run some groups on Facebook too, as well. So that must keep you very busy.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when both your work life and your social life both kind of depend on Facebook. It really blurs the boundaries between work life and personal life, which is often a little bit problematic. But on the plus side, you get to do a lot of good for a lot of people, and I probably feel more valuable than I've ever done before in my life because I'm doing the stuff that people say that I'm good at.
Yeah. No, I can pretty much relate to that, to be honest, as well. We have the same thing here too. And Aileen, hello Aileen.
Hello.
Hello. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm an autistic writer and librarian, and I've also been doing a lot of art during lockdown. And what else did I? Oh, I volunteer with Swan and Glasgow Women's Library.
So you two are highly creative.
Yes, that's a question.
Yeah, that's kind of loaded as well. You're highly creative, yes. Which I have to admit is something I'm really envious of, because I'm creative, but nothing that you can sort of pick up. I can't pick up a book and say I wrote this, or sort of point to a painting and say I created that. That process must be really cool to go through, though.
Personally, I think people often underestimate their own creativity. There's people confuse creativity with experience. For example, someone who picks up a paintbrush for the first time might be really creative with it, but not yet mastered the disciplines of it, whereas someone who's been painting for ages may be doing it without much in the way of creative flair.
Yeah.
And also, my first degree was in maths, funnily enough, and I remember one of my friends who was on the course, he had a dad who was a graphic designer and a mum who was a mathematician, and husband always used to say that his wife was the creative one of the two, because you do need a certain level of creativity to be a mathematician. That's often overlooked. So creativity doesn't have to be something you can physically pick up. It's something that's part of your thought process, basically.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the things, because sometimes people will say to you, Marion, you're really creative, and it always takes me a while. It's like, okay, so I have these creative solutions to problems. That's really cool. And it's not what you traditionally think of as creative, is it? Yeah. And I think sometimes for me with the creative process, sometimes it's just enjoying doing it rather than the finished outcome. Although some people might disagree, but having fun while you're actually doing the creating is just as important, I would imagine. Otherwise, what's the point in doing it?
depending on what you're doing,
Yeah.
sometimes think about the end product actually gets in the way of the creative process. It's like I can't speak much for other forms of creativity, but when I'm writing, for example, I try to completely forget that I'm intending to publish it, because if I'm thinking about what a reader's going to see in this, what are they going to interpret, I completely forget to write the story that I actually want to write. Stephen King calls it writing with the door open versus writing with the door closed. If you're writing with the door open, you're writing the first draft of your novel, thinking about what the New York Times is going to say about it and so on. If you're writing the door closed, you're just expressing your own creativity without the judgments of other people looming over you.
Yeah. Is that something that you have, Aileen, whenever you've been writing as well? Do you have an end product in view, or are you just going with the flow?
I think as I've been writing poetry more, it's much more kind of spontaneous. I did actually write the first draft of a young adult novel, but I've never really got beyond that because I find plotting really difficult. I just don't know. Yeah, I find shorter things easier actually, and just more fun, I think. I do sort of a lot of writing for wellbeing type groups that I go along to, and I'm sort of trying to get that started with Swan as well. That's something I enjoy more, so I'm doing that a bit more, whereas I find sort of just trying to come up with a plot a bit more tortuous and just not as fun. So yeah, just sort of enjoy just writing whatever sort of comes into my head a bit more, I think, and what's sort of happening that day, whereas something longer I just find it's like just gets a bit more arduous, and it's like less spontaneous and less fun maybe. But that's just me personally. I think everyone's obviously different in that way.
Yeah, I think it must be really difficult whenever you're doing something creative, even because I remember whenever we were organising the art exhibit for Autistic Pride last year, we were kind of worried about sort of the reception that it was going to get and how it was going to go. And even though, I wasn't exhibiting anything of mine in it, that just as the thing itself was something that was in the back of my mind. And I think it's a bit of a shame whenever you're worried sometimes about the reception that you're going to get, and it gets in the way of the process, isn't it? And if you are going to have work that's going to be published and shared with other people, I tend to think that a lot of the creative things that I've done, it feels like it's bearing my soul. And then whenever people are talking about it, it's a really personal, it's like somebody saying something about your kid in some ways, isn't it? Yeah, your work kind of feels like your baby. So I feel a little bit protective over the views that other people have. Is that something you guys resonate with, or?
Yeah, I think it's, sorry Chris, on you go.
No, after you.
I was going to say, it's the getting past the inner critic, I think, is for me and a lot of people is quite difficult, whether it's like poetry or writing or art, because it's you always think it's something that's skill, it's or whatever, you're just sort of you're sort of taught that it has to be a particular sort of thing, a particular style or whatever, and maybe you don't feel you fit with that, or you just feel you have to, for some reason. I think if you're doing something creative, if you're doing art or something, it's almost like you're not allowed to go through the process of just like learning the skill. You've got to be immediately amazing, or it's not worth doing, which is quite a weird way to look at it. I don't think there's anything else you would do that there's that expectation that it's not going to take you a while to build up, the skill level, so you can sort of feel more confident. So I think it's how it's almost like half of the thing is just to build up your own self-confidence and to feel that you have the right to do, and almost to write or whatever it is you're doing until you sort of get past that stage where you're just feeling like, oh, this is just such a lot of rubbish, I don't know, or just allowing yourself to write a lot of rubbish, and then eventually, hopefully, you'll write something that's half decent, and then that's okay, or you're happy with. I don't know, Chris, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I agree. And so on top of that, so I think there's a misconception that in order to be a valid creative person, you've got to be good at stuff. No, you haven't. So I heard this this analogy a little while ago about how bird song really makes the garden more beautiful, and the birds aren't professional singers. They don't subscribe to a certain curriculum to qualify as good singers. It's and so sometimes doing stuff just because it's fun it is enough. I mean,
Yeah.
Being an artist and creating yourself expressively through art could be drawing funny pictures with stick figures, and that's it. It doesn't have to be have to be Picasso or Van Gogh or anything like that. It's just whatever works for you. I think it's a borderline problematic when we say that you can only really qualify as a writer if you write stuff that's good enough to make money from it. You know, I was writing for let's see, so when I was 13. First novel got published when I was early 30s. So I was writing for basically 20 years before I made any money from my writing whatsoever.
And you were still a writer through that time?
Say again?
You were still a writer throughout that whole time? Yeah.
Absolutely. And to be honest, there are probably a bunch of unpublished authors who the quality of their writing is probably far better than mine, because unfortunately, well, it's what I'm calling the 50 Shades of Grey effect. The stuff that gets published is not necessarily the stuff that's good. It's just the stuff that's marketable. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, whether or not you're a professional something or other doesn't necessarily mean you're a good something or other. No. And also, you don't have to be a good something or other in order to enjoy that something or other.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that is it, isn't it? It's whether or not it's something that you get a huge amount out of. There's a young autistic chap that I know who's in primary school, and recently he's taken to doing something which I think is really creative, and there's certain bits of music that are really dramatic in movies that he absolutely loves, and he'll turn the TV down whenever there's a really dramatic bit, so then there's no volume, and then play that really dramatic music over it, so then it can add drama to it.
Oh, brilliant.
Right? And it's, again, it's not something that's sort of tangible, but the level of concentration, the timing, so that the music fits in with what's going on, and it fits in with the subtitles and everything. It's, yeah, and I think that the joy that people get out of doing something that is different, you're making a difference to the world around you, changing the way that it gets perceived and things, and it's huge, isn't it? And it doesn't matter whether that's getting 1 million books sold, or whether it's just entirely for your own enjoyment. Creativity is valid regardless, isn't it? Yeah.
As much as most people would prefer the 1 million copies sold, then yes, it is equally valid.
I mean, I'm sure that'll happen at some point, if not already. It's bound to, right? Bound to. I tend to think as well, whenever I'm doing anything creative, and I don't know if it is just purely an autistic thing or if it's something that other creative types get to, is I get massively absorbed in it to the exclusion of everything else. So there are times when I've been working on something and I'll be sitting maybe in my living room and tapping away, and my husband might come into the room and he'll say, "How are you doing, Marion?" And then at that point I'm like, I need to go to the toilet, I need to eat, and I need to drink, and I haven't noticed any of these things at all. My leg has gone numb, so then, you know, I stand up and I fall over because of that sort of thing. And I just find it so utterly absorbing that the world ceases to exist outside of it. And, you know, it's kind of like, you know, getting massively absorbed in a special interest as well. But it's whenever you're creating something, there's not necessarily an easy stopping point to get to, a natural break. And that can be a little bit tricky whenever it comes, for me, for self-care, to be honest. But yeah, is that something that happens with you guys whenever you're working as well? Is that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely the art, especially because it's funny, the art is more something I do alone. The writing tends to be within groups, which is probably a bit different from how most people do it. And we get sort of timed writing prompts and things like that. So it's usually something like 7 minutes. So you've got a very fixed starting point and stopping point, which isn't very much. And then we share. So it's something that's, you know, not in any way done with a view to publication or anything like that. But it's just, I think it's just very therapeutic. So it's actually, Yeah, and it's good to have something like that. Is just the emphasis is absolutely on just something that's for you and not with a view to being published. And actually, I think you can get, in a way, you can get better writing that way as well, because it's just having that complete freedom to just write, you know, the biggest lot of rubbish if you want. But it's something. The point is, it's something you're expressing honestly and openly, and that's true for you, and that sort of tends to make it. I mean, it's difficult to say what's better or not better, but just more interesting to read, maybe.
More from the soul.
What was that?
So a bit more from the soul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and I love doing that, and I love hearing, you know, what other people write as well. And it's like, I think as well, it's almost like a way of communicating that sort of cuts out all the small talk as well. You know, it's like, right, this is actually what I want to talk about, and I love that. You know.
Actually, do you know what? Well, Aileen shared some of her poems with me a couple of weeks ago, and I have to admit, whenever I'd finished reading that little document that you sent, I did feel like I knew you better, and then I felt really guilty that you weren't part of that process, and it felt like a one-way street, and I felt really bad about that. But it was really lovely getting to know you better at the same time. Yeah, this overthinking empathy, isn't it? Yeah.
I felt like you'd stolen them from me and made
I stole your thoughts. That's
it's kind of what poets do, I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't know whether I feel bad or delighted.
Yeah.
Both?
It's your choice. Whatever you think.
Well, Chris, your books, you said that you wrote them, what was it, 10 years or so before?
Yeah, the first draft of the novel that would eventually become Underdogs, which I swear is coincidence, just happens to be on the desk right there, because I've always picked them up for reference, and second one came out a few weeks ago, funnily enough. But yeah, the very first draft was written 10 years ago, and it's kind of beautiful, really. It was written as a coping mechanism for me being unemployed, and it was I wasn't doing anything else with my days, so I thought whenever I didn't get any work as a supply teacher, I'd go down to my local pub, have a pub lunch, write this ridiculous story about just about the most mathematically unwinnable war possible, and it was just something I wanted to express, really. Because one thing that may go some way to explaining why so many autistic people love writing is because, generally speaking, the world is on everyone else's terms. Everyone else gets to decide the rules, and often it feels like we're either just along for the ride, or in any case, ability to influence the world around us is very limited. But in writing Underdogs and watching students write their stories as well, it is a universe where they get to make up the rules. All of these characters, I get to decide what kind of people they are. I get to decide what the plot twists are. I was about to say I get to choose who lives and who dies, but that sounds a bit awful. But
no, I think that's fair, though. I think George Martin would have said something similar.
Oh yeah, that's
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It started off as just something that was entirely for me. It was never going to get published. I mean, it was ridiculous. Who on earth is going to publish something like that? And then skip forward to 2017. It was my dissertation for my creative writing masters. Less than a year later, someone saw it, like an editor saw it and said, "Oh, I know a publishing company that's interested in that kind of thing." And a year later, it was actually here on my desk, actually published, and we're 2 novels into the series now. But everything I said earlier about writing with the door closed, doing things for you rather than just writing for the market, because the market changes direction every 6 months anyway.
Yeah.
It's like once Twilight came out, everyone started writing vampire fiction because they think they'd cash in on it. But by the time they'd finished, by the time they submitted it to publishers, the market had already moved on, and it was suddenly something else. I think it was Hunger Games by that point. So yeah, but write for yourself. If you're lucky, if eventually the market will turn in a direction that's in your favour. But one thing's for sure: if you only write for the marketing and don't write for yourself, you'll never really get anything that you're proud of, and it probably won't succeed anyway.
No.
But one thing that's just to finish off, the thing that I really liked was that about a month into this lockdown, I managed to finish the Underdog series. I'd struggled with the third book onwards out of a book series of 4. I managed to get the first 2, what I believed were kind of right, and then got stuck on the third one. But the moment the publisher said, "Oh yeah, send us a second book," that's fine, I immediately started writing the third because, well, time was probably going to start running out.
Yeah.
But it meant that after 10 years and 4 months, I finally finished what I started. And the thing that they said was beautiful at the start, but it took me a long, long time to actually get to my point. The same book series was started by an unemployed 20-something guy with mental health issues, just trying to keep his head above the water, was finished by a published novelist and an international speaker, and someone whose books people actually buy, despite that not actually being the intention. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That is tremendous though, isn't it? And I think it's one of those things that a lot of people feel that that they get stuck into a place, and that whenever they are in a difficult place, that they are just the sum of their difficulties, that there's not any other kind of future. And it's one thing that I tend to say an awful lot to autistic people, is that you are much more than the sum of your difficulties. There is much more to you than that. You are all these joyful, glorious aspects as well. And some of those difficulties might never go away, but that does not mean that you cannot succeed. It doesn't mean that you cannot create something, and whether that's to get published and bought by a million people, or whether that's purely for your own enjoyment, that's still there. That doesn't change. And it's allowing yourself to see past that dark place, isn't it? Just to do something that's positive for you. And I think creativity is a really good thing for that. Yeah. I mean, you were talking about Aileen, writing as therapy as well, and I think it's a really good thing to be able to put the pen down onto paper, or to pick up the paintbrush, or to write a piece of music, or to do some dancing as a way of expressing how you feel.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is, though, if you are in quite a dark place, sometimes it's having the sort of confidence or self-esteem actually just to allow yourself to do that. So that's sometimes why, you know, groups or things can be really useful, or just a bit of encouragement, you know, depending on how you're feeling. Because yeah, it's easy sometimes just to start, especially if you start a novel. It's like, I mean, well, as you know, Chris, it can take a while. So it you know, can be quite easy to get discouraged along the way and things. So just, or you know, having some kind of support to do that as well, I think could be really good.
Yeah, I can't imagine sort of having 3-4 books sort of in an idea. I mean, did you have a vague area of where you wanted it to go, or was it just, let's take these characters and run with it, see how you feel at the time?
Tricky. The thing is, George R. R. Martin says that you got 2 types of writers. You got architects and you've got gardeners. The gardeners are the kind of people who just put some characters in a situation, see what happens. And on the one hand, it really, really works for some people, except you can kind of take it too far, where it's so unstructured that you end up a quarter of a century passing and not finishing your novel series, George R. R. Martin. At the other end of the scale, you've got architects, and that's basically me as a teenager, where every single thing needed planning out very, very specifically, and was utterly inflexible. These days, I'm about 85% architect, 15% gardener, where I'm writing stuff, it is specifically planned because I need to know what I'm doing. But if I'm in the middle of writing and then something better comes up, I think, you know what, yeah, stuff it, let's put this in as well. So I think for me personally, I've got the balance right. But yeah, the series is kind of trying not to give anything that could even be interpreted as spoilers here, but it goes roughly in the same direction that I'd planned, except, well, to be frank, I'm a much better writer now than I was back in 2010, so I've refined it, and so that some of the main set pieces and maybe or maybe not death scenes are pretty much exactly the same as they were back then. But even if you're the strictest architect type writer possible, you do still need a bit of flexibility. You need to give yourself permission to change your own mind about about things, even if you spent the last 10 years with that being a specific plan.
Sometimes you need to be able to change. I think Neil Gaiman did have a really nice quote about George R.R. Martin not being, try to think of how to put this in a polite way, not being beholden to having to do anything. Fully aware that some children might be watching, yeah, but at the same time, as a fan, I'm looking forward to more coming out. And I bet some of your fans, though, Chris, would have been sat there going, what's he saying next about these death scenes? Yeah, just to listen in, make sure that they're getting something.
So I didn't hear that last bit.
So yeah, I bet some of your fans will have been sort of leaning really close at that point. What's he saying? What can I glean from that bit? Who's going to happen?
I just like the fact that you're calling them fans. I don't strike myself as the kind of person who has fans. Like people who read my books and kind people who send me compliments, and the occasional person who, this is the very first bit of feedback you had for the second Underdogs book. The very first person to finish it in simultaneous sentences said, "You're a monster," and "When's the third book coming out?" Which was great. I loved that feedback.
Brilliant, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, a couple of people, whenever we said that we were going to be talking to you, said, "Oh, I'm such a fan." So apparently you do. So there you go. Wow. That's quite nice, right?
Yeah, / overwhelming / huge compliments. Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's move on then. No, I know some people who, whenever they get complimented, they just do not know how to take it, and they get massively just, and yeah.
I've got to be honest. When I first started Autistic Not Weird, I started on the back of several years of inferiority complex. Like, people like me aren't supposed to get compliments, you know. I mean, you're supposed to be good at things like chess and writing, stuff with no real life applications. I mean, I'm never going to get a career as a writer, but the things that really, really matter are the things that I'm bad at. And so all these other non-autistic people, casting judgment, etc., etc. I'm sure you know how it is. But after I started Autistic Not Weird, started getting people sending me some really nice compliments about how much I'd helped their teenage children with really low self-esteem. And so back in 2015, the me who was reading it back then, I had to like stand up, walk away from the computer, spend the next half an hour kind of processing it, because it was a lovely compliment. It made my day, but at the same time, I'm not sure if cognitive dissonance is the right word, but am I allowed to receive compliments? That means I did something good. Am I the kind of person who's allowed to be seen positively? I mean, like typical autistic self-esteem, the way we're kind of forced to see ourselves by other people a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why we kind of started Autistic Pride in Aberdeen as well, is partly because I taught lots of autistic kids, partly because I'm the mother of an autistic child as well. Whenever I got my diagnosis, I thought, one of the reasons why I wanted to be assessed in the first place was because I thought, if this means that I can help the other autistic youngsters that I know to feel good about themselves, if they can see that there are some autistic adults out there who are happy and confident with their identity, that's got to be a good thing. Because when I was growing up, if I'd had somebody else out there who was like me and doing well and feeling happy about themselves, that would have just meant the world. It really would have. And I maybe wouldn't have seen myself as this loner weirdo to quite the same extent. I mean, I'm still a loner weirdo in some ways, but I kind of feel like I'm a loner weirdo with a community now that's there whenever I want it, which is really nice. That's absolutely fine. And I remember sort of walking away from the hospital with my new diagnosis and being excited to go home and telling my family. And I'd heard about Autistic Pride, and then it was something that I was really excited about. And I was like, I'm going to put on a Pride celebration because I'm so damn happy. This is great. And I'd said it to one of my colleagues a couple of days later, and I wasn't thinking it'll happen in 2018. I was thinking maybe 2019, 2020. No. 3 or 4 months later, that was it. It was happening.
Brilliant.
And it was all very, very last minute and kind of thrown together. But one of the things that people did come up to us and say was, I've never been around other autistic people. This is great. And I've never really met any other people who are like me. This is great. We had a young girl who had just been diagnosed autistic that week. Wow. She was 6 or 7 at the time, and there were all these other autistic women who were going around, and we kind of said, congratulations, welcome, you're part of our community. This is really nice. And the feedback that we got from autistic people and from the parents of the autistic children who've come along was really quite phenomenal. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't know what to do with this, I'm just going to ignore it, and stim a lot, and that's going to be fine, right? It's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. And I said it so often, it clearly wasn't fine. But afterwards, once the panic that I'd done something that had been really positive had settled down, it felt okay. And again, it was kind of one of those things. I did something where autistic people felt good about themselves afterwards, and that was allowed. And that's a really big thing, isn't it? It's a big shift in the way that we're thinking. And when you've had people we had people in their 50s who came along who hadn't necessarily been told many positive things about their identity, being able to leave with this big smile on their face because they're part of a community. That's something that they get from your group online, and it's something that they got from us in the park. That's a really powerful thing to do for people, isn't it?
And a very creative thing to do.
Kind of, yeah, sort of, yeah. No, it was a nice thing, and I think that's one of the things that I do like about creativity sometimes, is the effect that it has on others. And I think for some people, whenever, I know that, Aileen, when I was reading your poems, even though they were written by you, as an autistic woman, I saw myself reflected in a lot of them. That was really nice. And if I was sort of ages with some of the characters in your novels, Chris, seeing myself reflected in something that's creative, in something that's out there that anyone could go and buy or anyone could borrow from a library, that's not something I had growing up. That's really powerful. That's a huge difference to other people, I think. It's something that I know that the autistic kids that I've worked with, my own autistics, and being able to see themselves out there in society, in a book that they can carry around, in a video that they can watch on YouTube. That's huge, seeing yourself reflected. Yeah.
And just to help sort of, I don't know, the wider understanding, it's okay, everybody doesn't have to be the same. You know, it's okay. For some people are a bit different, and that's fine as well, I suppose. You know, it's like, we don't all have to fit a particular, I don't know, ideal for something. I mean, I don't know, even, yeah, I mean, who fits that anyway, whether you're autistic or not, you know, a lot of the time, really, it's all nonsense.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? You know, when autistic people are told that we have to sort of be very assimilated and look like everybody else, whereas non-autistic people are celebrated for their individuality, you know, and it's a really strange way, isn't it? Yeah. But that is one of the things that we do have, because some people sent us some artwork that we could have a very quick look at, if I can work out the technology to do it, was looking at their autistic experiences and sharing them too. So shall I see if I can possibly share the screen, if it might work, because it worked so well earlier. Yeah. Let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, so this was our art exhibit that we did last year. We were at Union Square in Aberdeen, which is one of the newest shopping centres. And every once in a while, they do take in charities to do a little bit of work. And they said that our art exhibit was the one that got the most engagement with the shoppers that they'd ever seen. People were coming by who weren't expecting to see an exhibit, and it was all pretty much manned by autistic people. So getting to see that was something that they found incredibly cool. Yeah, this is what I was talking about with sharing your autistic experiences through art. And I remember the first time I saw this by Aspie Girl, and thank you, Aspie Girl, for letting us share it. It so resonated with me. It felt like seeing myself on the screen. And it's something that some of the autistic men that I've worked with have looked at it and they thought exactly the same thing as well. And I think it's because anxiety is just so part of many of our everyday lives. I can't imagine what it's like to not feel anxious for any kind of length of time. And yeah, there are times that I generally thought, oh, today's a great day, so I must be forgetting something. What on earth am I forgetting? And that's exactly what she's done here, isn't it? It's really nice to be able to have that.
Far too accurate. distressingly accurate.
It's, has she got a crystal ball? I'm fairly sure she's tapped into my brain to see that, right?
Or maybe it's just autistic empathy.
I think so, yeah. Very much. Yeah, the other one that she did that I really, really loved was...
Oh, I just felt something looking at that.
What did you feel?
Like, yes.
Yes!
The little flying thing at the end, I've never literally pictured flight as part of the sensation, but I see exactly what it's communicating. That is how it feels.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. I remember as a kid always loving stepping on leaves to hear the rustle and sort of being told that I would eventually grow out of it. I'm in my 40s now and I have not grown out of it. And I would be really, really sad if I did. It's glorious, that crunch.
I've not grown out of it either, so.
No, thank goodness. I'd be really sad if I had done. That would be...
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one that I also really kind of hard related to as well. I love Halloween, really, really love Halloween, and getting to dress up is just fantastic. But the masking as part of autistic experience is so much there for so many people. I don't know how much you guys mask, but whenever I hit autistic burnout shortly before I got my assessment to find out that I was autistic, I just couldn't mask anymore. And since then, I've not felt the same need to, and I've tried really hard not to going back to masking. But even with that, there are times I catch myself masking and I'm thinking, why am I doing that? And then I remember sometimes it's because you feel like you have to in order to fit in, but it's...
Yeah, I think the older I get, actually, it's interesting. I think the less I do it. I don't know if it's just tiredness or something. I don't know.
Or maybe you're just wary of the fact that, look, you know, I've been doing this for long enough. It's only worked once in a while. So how about I just say stuff it, be the person one, be all like. In fact, during the worst days when I was masking my worst, I am. One of the things that kind of helped me out of that was realizing that, sounds a bit depressing, but perhaps the biggest clue that the friends had for 5-10 years at least were genuinely friends of mine was the fact that they'd have had plenty of opportunities to stop being my friend if they felt so motivated. So
yeah.
So yeah, you learn a lot about who your actual friends are once the mask comes off. And as sad as it sounds, like, oh, as soon as they saw who I really was, they abandoned me. It sounds depressing, but that sounds a lot like the other person's got the problem and not you.
Yeah, yeah.
And really, how much should you have valued the people who liked a fake version of you rather than the people out there, some of whom you may not have met yet, who would actually value the actual version of you?
The genuine one, yeah. Yeah. I think about a year or so after I got my autism diagnosis, I did turn around to one of my friends who knew me shortly before I got assessed, at a time when I was masking really, really hard and had since not really masked at all. And I said, you know, am I really different now? You know, are you still as comfortable with me now as you were before? And she's like, Marion, you're just the same old weirdo you always were, so it's fine. And at that point, I kind of fell in love with her. I was like, this is great. Yeah, you're fine. I'm really happy to hear that. So that's okay. I love this one because it's got fidget objects in it. And I think when people talk about fidget objects, they tend to think about for young children in school. But as someone who's been sat here playing with one for as long as I have been, and yeah, for sure, they do make such a difference, don't they? I don't go into a meeting without a fidget object these days. It just doesn't happen. And it does make a huge difference for helping to block out some things and for helping to manage. They're so valuable. So this is our future. It's where we're going to return eventually, at some point. Yes? You guys are really reassuring there. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. I get mesmerised for the boy who appears to be sort of trapped in the bubble in the middle there.
Can I just point out that he's jumping up and down in that one and clearly having an enormous fun.
Yeah.
That he may have been trapped in a bubble, but it was great. That's where he wanted to be. Yeah.
That's fine.
I was just surprised that I was looking at some actual real life green plant life as far north as Aberdeen.
We have loads.
No, I was joking, don't worry. But
Can't believe you said that.
is that something that's going to get cut out?
I think I might want to leave it because it
I
isn't.
would leave that. I think we should leave that.
Yeah, we have some. It's I live right next to a nature reserve. There's lots of really nice green areas. It doesn't stay green all year round, but it's quite nice. But actually, this was in Hazelhead Park in Aberdeen, and we have deer there and everything. It's lovely. I'm not trying to oversell Aberdeen, but I don't want too many people coming and visiting. But it is really nice. Yeah. This was a piece that one of our Swan members had done about masking as well, and I remember seeing this and sort of hard relating to it as well, because well, we sometimes joke that I'm a bit of a unicorn up here because we haven't had an assessment and diagnostic pathway for adults yet. Somehow I managed to get assessed and diagnosed, and I'm a woman, so clearly unicorns think I'm mythical because people like me don't exist. And also unicorns, the national animal for Scotland, so it's great. But it does feel a bit like that sometimes, doesn't it? Whenever you come in and you have to, yeah. And our lovely logo redone, which is beautiful. I think there was another couple of pieces that we wanted to share. That this is Scotland and it still has some greenery, so that's quite nice. But it's the beautiful mountains that got me. This is Lindsay Dudley, who is an autistic artist who does some fantastic work. So thank you to Lindsay for sharing with us as well. And I think that creative process, that getting caught up in it and being able to explore your world and shape it yourself is something that I think she kind of hard relates to. And I wanted to share this as well because at the beginning of lockdown, Lindsay very, very generously decided that she was going to take some of her paintings, put them outside where she lives and give them away. Normally she would be charging for her beautiful artwork, and rightly so, but knowing that people were going to get fed up of just looking at the walls inside their house, she massively generously gave away some free art. I mean, how cool is that? That's
quite amazing.
It is. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of empathy right there, and generosity. So massive kudos to her for doing that, I think. Aileen, this is another one of yours.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So you decided to take some of the pictures that we took from Autistic Pride and render them in Lego.
Yeah, as you do.
As you do. I thought they were lovely. It was really pretty. And that dog is exactly like the dog that came along just then. Yeah.
It was really funny trying to get the bubbles though, because I was like, I was trying to balance this Lego and film on my phone and blow bubbles all at the same time. And it was just like...
So you maybe did a team.
I could have done, but
you could have done with the team.
So I was like, okay, this is not easy, but yeah, it sort of worked.
I've just a couple more to share, because last year one of the big highlights that we had when we were in Union Square was a young autistic lad called Logan, and Logan's work was just so massively well received, and I want to say a big thank you to his mum and Logan for sending us some of his new pieces that he's made since last year. And Logan is 6. He's just 6 years old, and the amount of detail that he puts into his work, I think, is just stunningly gorgeous, and so creative. Where did these ideas come from? They're gorgeous, aren't they? It's, this was the dinosaur was one of my absolute favorite pieces from last year. Cool. It is incredibly cool. He was 5 whenever he drew that, which was really cool. And the solar system right down next to it. I mean, the scale, the detail on the scale there as well was just absolutely wonderful. I was really impressed. And yeah, I think this has to be one of your favorites, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful chess pieces. So I think we need to check out and see if he's free for a game of chess at some point. And again, I think the anthropomorphism of the vegetables in the garden. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm fairly sure that everything is alive an awful lot of the time. And, you know, I want to treat everything really carefully because it's a person. And it's one thing that one of my colleagues does as well. So he describes himself as an animist. So he treats everything with real reverence and respect just because it's clearly alive. It's clearly a thing. And I like that that's gone on in there too. And the eyes. And these ones are just stunning. And the microorganisms, I think, how many people are talking about microorganisms and things these days?
You should make t-shirts or something. I think it'd be really good in a t-shirt.
Well, that is something that he and his family could consider, couldn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's a movie right there, clearly. I would definitely go and watch that one. And Pokemon. I don't know what the percentage of autistic people who have Pokemon as a special interest is, but it's got to be high, for sure. So I really like that he was able to take that into, and sharks. It's all really cool, isn't it? Skeleton as well. So I think we're really very, very lucky that Logan has been very kind enough to share all of these beautiful pieces with us too. So thank you. And I think last we have some really gorgeous photography from another member of Swan, which is just stunning. I mean, how often, every time I see a cobweb, I always think that I should be taking a photo, but to get it with all those beautiful dewdrops on and get the light in at the background and everything as well, it's just stunning.
I'll lead the way, she said without hesitation. Go for it. There was a lot to be said for defiance. Kate had grown up believing it was unhealthy, but like most attitudes, there was a place for it. The staff at her last mainstream school had been the opposite of Oakenfold. They did not appreciate her, they did not understand her, and they had not believed her. In the end, she didn't enter special ed because of her autism. She was just bullied out of mainstream by both students and staff. The most important moment of her life had been a panic attack. Sometime during the 8-month wait for a new school placement, she had seen the old school bus out of her bedroom window, and then bang, her mind was gone. Later that afternoon, from underneath the covers of her overused bed, she had come to realise how much she had hated her anxiety and not herself. It had been the moment she had decided to stop hating the person she truly was, rather than the tiny part of her which often took over the rest of her personality. From then on, she had confronted her fears wherever she had found them. The anxiety remained, but its grip wasn't quite as tight. Thanks to her defiance in the face of mental health problems, it's been less difficult to start at Oakenfold being a special school. But even without the improvements to her life, she would have done it just for the satisfaction of kicking her anxiety in the balls. There you go.
When I am famous, I shall wear velvet, designer labels and vintage lace. I will refrain from washing dishes or scrubbing floors, clearing tables or ironing clothes. I will make long speeches at dinners where everyone hangs on my every word. I will have a butler in a smoking jacket who makes peach bellini for breakfast, irons my newspapers even though I don't read them. I will keep sleek black Labradors who sprawl in front of a log fire the size of a small room, and I will have a library the size of a house and a house the size of a castle. I won't bother with cold callers, emails or junk mail. My people will see to that. I will sit back and relax in my villa on the Italian Riviera. I will lounge in cafes, pout in expensive clothes and giant sunglasses, pretend to be offended if anyone pays me any attention, and I will grow old disgracefully and live wondrously as a firework, fabulous to my last breath.
Nice.
That was great, thank you. I do love that. Is that your future?
Who knows? Who knows?
When people see your art, clearly. As long as we can borrow the butler sometimes as well, because a Bellini for breakfast sometimes might be quite lovely.
Yeah, you can come visit, don't worry.
In moderation, obviously. I would like to say a huge, huge big thank you to both of you for coming and joining me today. I've had so much fun talking to the pair of you. And it's been so nice getting to explore your creative processes and how the community has sort of supported and helped you, and how you guys have helped and supported it too. So thank you very much for coming and joining us.
Thanks, Marion.
No problem, thank you.
Yeah, and happy Autistic Pride to everyone out there today.
Yeah, let's do this. Oh, 27.217 seconds, which is, that's just about dead on average for me. So you know what, given I have people watching, I'm happy.